After Bilbo, Gandalf and the dwarves escaped the goblins of the Misty Mountains with the help of the eagles, they discussed what was to be done next. They had no food, no baggage, and no ponies to ride. They were also some miles north of where they had intended to be, and Gandalf was planning to leave them to attend to other pressing business. However, he agreed to at least try to help them out of their present plight. He knew of a very great person who lived not far away from where they were at that moment. His name was Beorn, and he was a skin changer, a man who could change his shape. Sometimes he was a huge bear, other times he was a great strong man. Gandalf also explained that he could be appalling when angry, but kind enough if he was humored. He decided it was best to introduce them slowly, first himself and Bilbo, and the others 2 by 2. They walked a good ways until they came to the edge of Beorn's home. It was here that Gandalf told the dwarves to wait until he either called or whistled to them, and then to come only in pairs, about 5 minutes between each pair. He said Bombur was fat enough to do for 2, and he should come alone and last. Then he set off, taking the frightened hobbit with them. At last they found Beorn, in the form of a huge man. Beorn towered tall above both of them.
Who are you and what do you want?
I am Gandalf.
Never heard of him. And what's this little fellow?
That is Mr. Baggins, a hobbit of good family and impeachable reputation.
Bilbo bowed. He had no hat to take off and was painfully conscious of his many missing buttons.
I am a wizard. I have heard of you if you have not heard of me, but perhaps you have heard of my good cousin Radagast, who lives near the southern borders of Mirkwood.
Yes, not a bad fellow as wizards go, I believe. I used to see him now and again. Well, now I know who you are, or who you say you are. What do you want?
To tell you the truth, we have lost our luggage and nearly lost our way, and are rather in need of help, or at least of advice. I may say we have had a rather bad time with goblins in the mountains.
Goblins? Oh ho, so you've been having trouble with them, have you? What did you go near them for?
We did not mean to. They surprised us at night in a pass which we had to cross. We were coming out of lands over west into these countries. It's a long tale.
Then you'd better come inside and tell me some of it, if it won't take all day.
Beorn led them to the porch of his house, and while Bilbo marveled at the flowers in Beorn's garden, Gandalf began his tale.
I was coming over the mountain with a friend or two.
Or 2? I can see only 1, and a little one at that.
Well, to tell you the truth, I did not like to bother you with a lot of us, until I found out if you were busy. I will give a call if I may.
Go on, call away.
So Gandalf gave a long, shrill whistle, and presently Thorin and Dori came round the house by the garden path and stood bowing low before them.
1 or 3, you meant, I see. But these aren't hobbits, they're dwarves.
Thorin Oakenshield at your service.
Dori, at your service.
I don't need your service, thank you. But I expect you need mine. I'm not over fond of dwarves, but if it is true that you are Thorin, son of Thrain, son of Thror, I believe, and that your companion is respectable, and that you are enemies of goblins, and are not up to any mischief in my lands. What are you up to, by the way?
They are on their way to visit the land of their fathers, away east beyond Mirkwood, and it is entirely an accident that we are in your lands at all. We were crossing by the high pass that should have brought us to the road that lies south of your country, when we were attacked by evil goblins, as I was about to tell you.
Go on telling, then.
There was a terrible storm. The storm giants were hurling rocks, and at the head of the pass we took refuge in a cave, the Hobbit and I and several of our companions.
Do you call 2 several?
Well, no. As a matter of fact, there were more than 2.
Where are they? Killed? Eaten? Gone home?
Well, no. They don't seem to have come when I whistled. Shy, I expect. You see, we are very much afraid that we are rather a lot for you to entertain.
Go on, whistle again. I'm in for a party, it seems, and 1 or 2 more won't make much difference.
Gandalf whistled again, but Nori and Ori were there almost before he had stopped, for, if you remember, Gandalf had told them to come in pairs every 5 minutes.
Hello! You came pretty quick. Where were you hiding? Come on, my jack-in-the-boxes.
Nori, at your service.
Ori, at...
Thank you. When I want your help, I will ask for it. Sit down and let's get on with this tale, or it will be supper time before it is ended.
As soon as we were asleep, a crack at the back of the cave opened. Goblins came out and grabbed the hobbit and the dwarves and a troop of ponies.
Troop of ponies? What were you, a traveling circus? Or were you carrying lots of goods? Or do you always call 6 a troop?
Oh no, as a matter of fact, there were more than 6 ponies, for there were more than 6 of us. And well, here are 2 more.
Just at that moment, Balin and Dwalin appeared and bowed so low that their beards swept the stone floor. The big man was frowning at first, but they did their best to be frightfully polite, and kept on nodding and bending and bowing and waving their hoods before their knees, in proper dwarf fashion, till he stopped frowning and burst into a chuckling laugh. They looked so comical.
Troop was right. A fine comic one. Come in, my merry men, and what are your names? I don't want your service just now, only your names. And then sit down and stop wagging.
Balin
And Dwalin.
Now go on again.
Where was I? Oh, yes. I was not grabbed. I killed a goblin or 2 with a flash.
Good. It is some good beagle wizard then.
And slipped inside the crack before it closed. I followed down into the main hall, which is crowded with goblins. The great goblin was there with 30 or 40 armed guards. I thought to myself, even if they were not all chained together, what can a dozen do against so many?
A dozen? That's the first time I've heard 8 called a dozen. Or have you still got more jacks that haven't come out of their boxes?
Well, yes, there seem to be a couple more here now. Philly and Keely, I believe.
As he said this, these 2 now appeared and stood smiling and bowing.
That's enough. Sit down and be quiet. Now go on, Gandalf.
So Gandalf went on with the tale until he came to the fight in the dark, the discovery of the lower gate, and their horror when they found that Mr. Baggins had been mislaid.
We counted ourselves and found that there was no hobbit. There were only 14 of us left.
14? That's the first time I've heard 1 from 10 leave 14. You mean 9, or else you haven't told me yet all the names of your party.
Well, of course you haven't seen Owen and Glowin yet, and bless me, here they are. I hope you will forgive them for bothering you.
Oh, let 'em all come. Hurry up. Come along, you 2, and sit down. But look here, Gandalf. Even now, we have only got yourself, and 10 dwarves, and the hobbit that was lost. That only makes 11, plus 1 mislaid, and not 14, unless wizards count differently to other people. But now, please get on with the tale.
Beorn did not show it more than he could help, but really he had begun to get very interested. You see, in the old days he had known the very part of the mountains that Gandalf was describing. He nodded and growled when he heard of the hobbits' reappearance, and of their scramble down the stone slide, and of the wolf ring in the woods. When Gandalf came to their climbing into trees, with the wolves all underneath, he got up and strode about and muttered,
Wish I'd been there. I would have given them more than fireworks.
Gandalf was very glad that his tale was making a good impression.
Well, I did the best I could. There we were, with the wolves going mad underneath us, and the forest beginning to blaze in places, when the goblins came down from the hills and discovered us. They yelled with delight and sang songs making fun of us. 15 birds in 5 fir trees.
Good heavens! Don't pretend that goblins can't count. They can. 12 isn't 15, and they know it.
And so do I. There were Biffer and Bofer as well. I haven't ventured to introduce them before, but here they are.
And me!
Bomber already hated being last, and refused to wait 5 minutes and followed immediately after the other 2.
Well, now there are 15 of you, and since goblins can count, I suppose that is all that were up the trees. Now perhaps we can finish the story without any more interruptions.
Mr. Baggins saw then how clever Gandalf had been. The interruptions had really made Beorn more interested in the story, and the story had kept him from sending the dwarves off at once like suspicious beggars. He never invited people into his house, if he could help it. He had very few friends, and they lived a good way away, and he never invited more than a couple of these to his house at a time. Now he had got 15 strangers sitting in his porch. By the time the wizard had finished his tale and told of the eagle's rescue and how they had all been brought to the Karak, the sun had fallen behind the peaks of the Misty Mountains and the shadows were long in Beorn's garden.
A very good tale. The best I've heard for a long while. If all beggars could tell such a good one, they might find me kinder. You may be making it all up, of course, but you deserve a supper for the story all the same. Let's have something to eat.
Everyone agreed and very much thanked Balin. Over the next 2 days, Balin investigated their story and learned everything they had told him was true. He liked the story even more now that he knew it was true, and agreed to help them with the next part of their journey.